Hello, Miss April here at Kearney Public Library. We are going to be doing an online Watercolor Wednesday course. So I'm going to show you a brief outline of what we're doing. I'll show you our supplies, just some basic steps, and these are going to be things that you can do whether you're a novice or if you've painted for a lot of years. They're kid-friendly and adult-friendly. It's just something fun you can do from home. Okay, for today's project, we are going to try something a little bit different. And if you signed up for the Watercolor Wednesday class, you'll actually come to the library and pick up your kit, and it'll have a set of these metallic looking paints and some of your other supplies. If you did not register for the class, but you still want to try the project, we are using black watercolor paper. We have a cold press and a hot press. And when you look at it, the hot press is going to have a smoother surface and the cold press is going to have more of a textured surface. They're both really fun to paint with. And if you can't find the black watercolor paper, you can always use white. It just won't be quite as bold with those metallics. So we have our metallic paints. I have a couple of different markers. I've got a silver Sharpie, and then I've just got kind of a glittery pen. I've got my number 8 paintbrush, some Q-tips, some cut up paper towels, and some water. I'm not using painter's tape on this project today. This paper is heavy enough, and I'm not using a lot of water when I apply the metallics, just to make it a little bit easier. So you can still apply the tape if you'd like, but you certainly don't have to. And I'm going to show a couple of different ways. With this cold press paper where it has more of a texture, it might be a little bit harder for some people to paint straight lines and images like that. So I'm going to focus more on a project like this, where you can actually let some of those colors show through and you don't have to worry quite as much as messing up. So when you paint your border, I'm actually just going to take a scrap of watercolor paper that I had handy. You can use a ruler, you can draw with a pencil, just so you can see your lines. And I'm going to use this darker metallic silver. And I'm really going to rub the water into the paint palette, just so that I get a thicker coating of the paint. And you can decide if you want some of that black paper to show through, or if you would prefer it to be a solid line. But I'm going to show you, this is that cold press paper where it has a really nice texture. And you can leave it like that. And it kind of gives it almost like a surface of snow or ice. And I'm just going to go through and paint all 4 edges. And if you get some kind of blotches in there, you can always just blot it, or I can show you with a black Sharpie, you can kind of correct that. So here's where you're going to see the difference between that rough edge and one where it's just a solid line. And these metallic paints have kind of a thicker texture to it anyways, as opposed to just a regular colored paint palette. So you can definitely just play around with it and see what you like. Just wiping the edge of my paper so that I'm not smearing my paint too much. And if you're using the hot press paper with a smoother surface, you're not going to get quite as much of this effect on your paper. Okay, I'm going to let that dry just a little bit. Make sure you clean your brushes really well in between your colors. It really does change how things look on your palette. I'm going to paint some holly leaves. I chose one of the lighter shades of green just so it would look a little bit brighter on that black paper. And when you're painting holly leaves, it's going to be like a U shape. And again, I'm not worried about making complete lines. I'm just letting some of that black speckling show through. And I had mentioned using silver markers or gel pens. If you feel like you can't get some of the detail, like the little veins and the holly leaves, you can use a silver gel pen like what I'm doing here. You can just as easily use the silver paint, just depending on how comfortable you are with your paint brushes. And then the holly leaves, you can either do it with Q-tips or your paintbrush. I'm going to show you both. And I just kind of took the darker pinkish red shade that we had on our palette here. And this doesn't have to be a perfect circle. I think that, you can kind of dab and play around with the paint, get comfortable with what you're doing. And I think it looks really pretty when you leave some of that black area. So there's one way to do it with the brush. And then with your Q-tip, you're still going to kind of swirl it around the way you would a paintbrush. And you can decide if you want to just make your cranberry, or excuse me, your berries small, or you can actually take more and just kind of speckle it like you would with a sponge brush. I think this looks a little bit more abstract, but it's still really pretty. So there's a couple of options for you. And I like to add accents. I really like to paint polka dots and any kind of pattern just to give it the feel of, a greeting card. And I'm actually going to use the tip of my brush. That's where these round brushes come in handy. If you get too much paint, it'll kind of glob. So if you take a black Sharpie, if there's something that you don't like about what you have, like here I kind of went a little bit over and it's not quite a dot, you can kind of just fill in with the black Sharpie to correct some of those little mistakes that you made. maybe you want those to look more round. Or I found metallic Sharpies. And you can just go in and draw your dots like that. Or you can even take your Q-tips and do the same thing, depending on how big you want those dots to be. And maybe you don't want them at all. You can always leave those out if you don't care for it. But that just adds kind of a nice border to it. And then if you feel like you want to write a message, go ahead and let everything dry so that when you're working in that middle area, you're not smearing your paints. And again, I wanted just kind of a guide. You can use a ruler, and that way you make sure your lines are straight. I'm just going to put a couple of lines here. And if you want to use this as greeting cards, you know, it doesn't have to be for any certain holiday. It could just be maybe you're missing someone and you want to tell them hello and see how they're doing. And I'm just putting a few dots along here. And I'm going to write season's greetings. You could actually cut out the middle area and put a picture if you're sending photos to family members maybe. And I'm just trying to write it nicely. I don't do a lot of calligraphy or anything like that. But if you do calligraphy, you could definitely make something really pretty. And I'm just kind of carrying over that theme with my dots that I've been putting on some of the other stuff. I wanted kind of a thinner line with my writing, but if you want a bolder line, that metallic Sharpie would definitely work. I know I've seen silver, bronze, gold. I've seen a lot of different colors with those. So there I've got my message. And I could go ahead and fill in some more of the holly leaves and the berries on this side. And if you have other cardstock paper, a cool thing is you can just glue that right onto the front. You know, you can decide if you want any colored stuff back there. You could use red paper, dark green. And then you can write a personalized message on the inside and have a really cool personalized greeting card.